If you'll turn your attention to my palette over here, the first thing that I want to do is put a little water in the center, and I'm going to mix up a nice light green in here to start out as my beginning wash for the olives and for the leaves. Now this is just a yellow-green color. Let me get a piece of my scrap paper and just test that out so you can see exactly what I have here. So this is my yellow-green. What I want to do now is make myself some green right here in between the yellow and the blue. I want to make it a little bit stronger green, a little bit darker. When I say stronger, I guess I should say more saturated, a darker green, darker value. This is going to be my mid-tone green. I'm going to check that out and see what color I have here. That looks pretty good. I think I want it to go just slightly darker, not by much, just a little bit. There we go. Then what I'm going to do over here on this side is basically the same thing, but I'm going to add a couple of other colors in there just to darken it up some. I'm going to grab that yellow before it gets into my blue. So I'm going to add blue over here. I'm going to also add a little bit of my neutral tint to darken that up even more. Now I think I may have gone a little, no, actually that looks really good. But then I want to take a little dot of my red and throw that in there. That's a nice color, but I'm going to doctor on it just a little bit more. Add a little more neutral tint, a little more red. Okay, that looks really good. So as you can see here, I have a light color, I have more of a mid-tone green, and I have a dark green, and I'll probably play around some more with the colors as we paint. Okay, so I'm going to start out with my size 6 brush. I'm going to begin by just putting water down on my paper. Now this olive has a highlight right here. So I'm going to keep my finger there so that I don't forget and then end up painting over that area. Right here is the stem for this olive, so I'm going to paint around that. And again, this is just clear water. Painting underneath that stem and then on either side of it. I'm going to bring my water down in here, then kind of just dance around my finger a little bit and then carry on. Now that I know about where I want that highlight, where it needs to be, I'm good to remove my finger. And again, I'm just painting around this area and just leaving no water in the area where that highlight is going to go. So what I want to do now is over here on my palette is pick up my lightest watery yellow-green. And I'm just going to start by dropping that in right up here at the top next to the little stem that goes into the top area of the olive. Bringing this color down around that highlight. And I'm trying not to get too close to where that highlight is in the center, just so it'll be easier to soften the edges later on if I need to. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and paint this leaf. I'm going to start out just with some yellow. And I'm going to take a little bit of water, put it right up here at the top where the stem and the leaf connect to each other. Then grab my yellow and drop that in right where it crooks over and starts to go down into the stem. And I'm taking a clean brush and just pulling this color back up this way a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop some water in on this leaf, just like I did the olive. Pick up my yellow-green and drop this in right on top of that water. Then what we're going to have to do after this is allow everything to dry. Now, I'll have to say, recently a lot of people have told me that they have a struggle with patience and waiting for their paint to dry in between coming back and putting on the next layer. Well, I have to say they are not alone, and if that's a struggle for you, neither are you. I struggle with the same thing. I want to just keep painting and not have to stop, but that is the thing with watercolor. You kind of are at its mercy sometimes, and you have to wait for it to get dry before you move on. So that's the place where we are right now. And I am going to give this a moment or two, or three or four, to dry, and then I'll come back and show you what the next step is. First wash is dry, we're ready to move on. So what I want to do next is I want to start out with this light wash again, but then I'm going to go over that with my mid-tone color, which is that second green that I mixed up. So I'm going to start out just like I did the first time, just laying some water down on top of my painted area, remembering to paint around that stem. This time I'm just going to put a little bit of water right over that area where that highlight is. I'm going to rub the brush around this area right here just to soften that up a little bit. Adding more water. Okay, so here we go. I'm stirring up this mixture in the middle here. Something you always want to remember to do is when you have a mixture of paint in your palette and it's been sitting for a minute, make sure you give it a little stir because those colors will probably separate on you while they're sitting there waiting for paint to dry. So I'm going to start out with this color again, remembering to stay away from where that highlight is going to go. Also, I noticed that some of my edges just look a little bit raggedy, so I'm going to try to get those straightened up also. Now I'm going to come into my mid-tone color here, and it's a little bit thicker mixture. I'm going to put my brush in it, but then take my brush and kind of rub it off the side of the palette there, just so that I don't have too much. I would rather add more paint in an additional wash or a glaze as opposed to getting too much on there at one time and then having to try to lift some of it. So I'm just dipping the tip of my brush into this mid-tone color, and I'm gradually building up the color on this olive. If I feel like it's too thick, I'll just dip my brush into that watery mixture and then pick up some more of my darker color. Make sure that the surface of your paper remains nice and wet. Something that I have found with people who have not been painting very long or are possibly brand new to watercolor and are using paper that is not 100% cotton, then they struggle with using enough water when they are painting on good quality paper. So when you have a good quality 100% cotton paper, use water. It is your friend. It helps you out. Less expensive paper and paper that is not 100% cotton has a tendency to not really accept a lot of water sometimes. It'll buckle on you. Your washes will not look good. So if you are accustomed to a paper that is more of a student grade or not 100% cotton, then you'll have to adjust how much water you use when you decide to switch over to something like what I have, which is Arches, and I also really like Fabriano Artistico paper. Okay, we have our second color. Now, I'm going to branch out and I'm going to grab a little bit of this darker color. I'm going to pull some of it over here, and I'm going to grab some of my lighter color and drop that into it, just to kind of tone it down, thin it out a little bit. Now this olive is a little bit darker up here on this side because the light is coming from this direction. So naturally there is more dark value on this back side because the light is not really getting around over here to this side. So I'm going to pull that around just like that. Put a little bit up in here as well. Now there is going to be a highlight up there that I will have to lift out. I'm going to grab some of that mid-tone green again, and I'm going to drop some of that in, and notice how I'm blending that into that darker green. Then I'm going to pick up some of my lightest green and blend that into that mid-tone green. Just come around like this. And see how this is already giving this olive more shape? I'm going to put a little more of that mid-tone in there. I'm actually going to grab some of my thicker dark color and drop this in here too. Okay, so now we pretty much have this olive where it needs to be. It is almost where it's got to go. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to work on this leaf again. I'm going to do the same thing I just did with the olive. I'm going to put water down first. This is just clean water. And you might notice that I'm not necessarily going all the way out to where my pencil line is. And the reason why I do that sometimes is just so when I come back in with my paint, I can better see where everything is going down, and it kind of helps me to prevent having some hard edges sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in this light green. This is, when I say light green, I guess you'll know that I mean my yellow green. So I have the light green, which is the yellow green, the mid-tone green, which is my second green, and the darker green, which is my third. I'm going to soften this out up here with some water. Now I'm going into my second green, which is my mid-tone, and there's a line that's going right down through the middle of this drawing, and that is where the midrib is. So since the light is coming from this direction, on the left-hand side of that midrib, there's going to be a little more shadow. On the right side of it, it's going to be a little bit of a highlight because the way the leaf is shaped, where that midrib is, the leaf kind of turns down and goes in toward that midrib. Now my paint and surface might be just a little bit wet. We'll take a look and see how the paint's going to roll on here. And if we need to lift some, we definitely can. So I'm going to rinse that brush out, dry it out a little bit, run that brush right down through the center. So I'm rinsing my brush in my water, drying it out, and it's just a barely damp brush, and then I'm running it down through the center just to help keep this highlight that's going to go right in there. So now I'll take that mid-green color, or my second green. I'm going to drop some in on this side. Now the surface of my paper is still pretty wet, still pretty shiny, so that will probably cause me to have to lift out of the center again, and if I do, it's okay. Not the end of the world. I'm going to take a little bit of this darker color and drop that in right in here. I think I'll take the deeper color over here that's not quite as watery and drop some of that in there. Just coming right up next to where that drawn line is, right in the center of the leaf, going back into my mid-tone. I did not rinse my brush, I just dipped it right into my mid-tone green and coming right back in here. So already we're starting to see this leaf take shape. Have my darkest green, dropping that in here, mid-tone green. Okay, so that's looking good. I'm going to rinse my brush, make sure that this highlighted area stays highlighted. Just running my brush down through the middle, rinsing it, drying it out, running it down through the middle again. You do not want to do this. Run your brush down through the middle, don't do anything, and then come back and run it down through the middle again, because what you're doing when you do that is you're just putting the paint that you picked up on your brush right back down onto your paper. So that's why it's important to always lift, rinse your brush, dry it out, and then come back in again for another pass. Okay, it's starting to get dry, so I can quit trying to lift. Right here and right there, there's a little speck of fuzz, probably from my towel over here. So I'm not going to try to get that out now because the paper is still wet. I'm going to leave it until it's dry, and then I will brush it away. Something that I am noticing though is right down here, this outside edge needs to be straightened up just a little bit. It's still damp, so I can get away with putting a little more color on there, but if your paper has gotten to where it's got a matte shine to it, where there's not really, it doesn't look wet anymore, do not do that. If your paper is starting to dry and you see anything that's uneven, do not add any moisture to it because you'll create a bloom. So we're going to stop here for a minute and get this dry and then come back and finish things up. Okay, now look at this olive. Does it not look really round and realistic? I still have my highlight in the middle. It's looking really, really good. I want to add a little more darkness to it, so I have my size 6 brush. I'm going to come in here with some water again and just put it back around this outside edge and run that down. And I forgot to grab that little piece of fuzz, so I'm going to grab it right now with my brush. Put a little bit of water over on this side, and I'm putting it past the point where I want the darker color to go. Then I'm going to dip into this dark color. I'm stirring it up first. I'm going to drop a little bit in up here and coming back around this edge. And if you'll notice on my palette, I'm stirring it, but again, I'm picking some up on the brush and then just tapping a little bit of it off so I don't have too much. Bring it down around this outside edge. I'm going to drop a little bit in on this side. Rinse that brush. I'm going to soften this out just so there's no hard edges there. Take my brush, dry it off. Just use the very tippy toe of that brush, the very point, and smooth this out. Now the brushes that I'm using, again, as I said, is Rosemary & Co brushes, and this is the Designer Series 344. It's a synthetic. I love these brushes. They have this fantastic point to them, and they keep their shape. They have a nice bounce to them. They're just fabulous. I've picked up some of my really light, my yellow green, the lightest green that I mixed up, and I'm bringing some of that in toward this highlight just because I want to accentuate that just a little bit more. And just by adding a wash of even this lightest green over the top of everything that's already there, it's going to enhance that light spot and make it appear even lighter. I'm taking a clean damp brush, just going around that center where that highlight is, just so that everything remains soft. Okay, great. Now we can come back over here and work on this leaf. So at this point, I'm going to do it one side at a time. So I'm going to grab my mid-tone green, or the second green that I mixed up. I'm just coming wet onto dry. I need to put a little more moisture in there. Wet onto dry. The outside edge of this leaf is going to remain just a little bit lighter in color. Then as we get toward the center, on this left-hand side, we want to drop in the darker color. Because remember I said that this leaf kind of curves down as it goes toward the midrib of this leaf. So we want to show that. Okay, if my brush still has that dark color on it, I'm going to dip right back into my mid-tone color and bring that in over here. Paint that in. So this is looking good. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to dip in here to my neutral tint that's by itself, nothing added to it. I'm going to get a little bit on the tip of my brush, and then I'm going to tap some of the excess off so I don't have too much. And I'm going to run that right here, right next to where this paint ends. Pick up a little bit more, tap off the excess, drag that all the way down to the end. And when it gets down here, I'm going to darken it up a little bit. Just run some more right down through here. Because this paint is still wet, it's allowing this color to kind of blend out into the rest. Now I'm going to come back over here and pick up my dark mixture, paint that right beside it, and then finally pick up that mid-tone and come right back in here again. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the color from this outside edge just to allow the appearance of some light hitting this outside edge of the leaf. Great. Now we need to let that dry before we go to the other side. So we'll get that dry. The olive is still damp, so I don't want to do anything to it right now. So I'm going to get this dry, and then we will come back and finish up the other half of the leaf and do the stem, and then lift out our highlights. That side of the leaf is dry, so why don't we move on over to the other side and get it painted. So on this side, we're going to have this little highlighted area right in here. So I think the way that I'm going to tackle that, I need to re-wet my paint over here a little bit, is I'm going to come in here, wet into dry, and paint on my second color, which is the mid-green. I'm going to come on in next to that dark line right there. Then I'll come over here to my darkest green and drop that in right out here along the outside edge, because remember, this leaf is curving in the middle, so it's dark on the left side, and it's going to have that highlight on the right side. And then out here on this outer edge, it's going to get dark again where the leaf is again curving down. So put a little bit of this darkest green out here, and if I want to go a little bit darker, I can always grab some of just the neutral tint, a little bit on the brush, drop that in out here along the outside edge, just to darken that up even a little bit more. So I think I'll just add a little more into the green. There we go, that looks good. Need to bring that in just a little bit more. And I'm going to pick up even more of that neutral tint so I can darken this outside edge just a little bit more. And I'm just picking up a little bit on the very tippy toe of this brush, just the last few little hairs, the little point, so that I don't have too much, and I can drop that in there. Now what I'm going to do is rinse my brush, take most of that water out, and then just drag this lightly damp brush right down through the middle right there, just to do a little more lifting and add a little more highlight. So that looks good. So what we'll want to do next is mix up the color that we want to use for the stem. So I'm going to clean out this little area of my palette, use my mixing brush. I'm going to start out with some yellow. Going to grab a little bit of red and add that to it, and we're going to create sort of a orangey color here, kind of a yellow orange. So see that in the palette there? I've got kind of a yellow orangey color going on. Then we'll come over here to the blue, grab just a little bit of that. We want to add this slowly so that we don't turn this into a green, but rather a beige color. So I've got that in there. Let's grab a scrap piece of paper, and I think we have it right there. So that was mostly green, a little bit of the quinacridone rose, and a little bit of the blue, and that made our beige. So I'm going to switch down to a smaller brush. This is the size 4. I'm going to come in here and just kind of take a wet brush and blend this green out just a little bit so that I can have a softer, smoother transition between the beige and that green that was on there from before. Just run that up through there and down into the olive. I'm going to take a little bit, again, just on the very tippy toe of the brush. I'm going to drop that right down in here because this part of the stem gets just a little bit darker. Oop, that was a little too much, so I'm wiping my brush off. Then blending that in. I want to go slowly here, not too much at any one time, till I get it to the color I want it to be. I'm going to also grab just a smidge of the red to keep that from going too much toward black, brown, and keep it more of a warm brown. So I put a little red on there, or the quinacridone rose, and now I'm coming back with some of this neutral tint and placing that right on top. Rinsing the brush out, I'm grabbing a little more of that light beige and putting that back on top, and then softening that out right up here across the top where it goes into the leaf. So I got this dry, so our next step is to add a little shading down in here. So I'm going to dip into this drier green mixture over here on my palette. See, I just got my brush wet. The paint was dry, and I'm just picking some of that paint up on the end of my brush. And since the light is coming from this direction, this stem is casting a little bit of a shadow on the back side of the olive. So let's include that. This is just one of those little details that will help to create a more realistic looking painting just by putting something as simple as a shadow in there. I'm going to go back into my mid-green color again. I did not clean my brush, and I want to add just a little more dark color up in here, but I don't want to go super crazy on it. I want it to be a little more subtle, but I want this to look like it curves down into where the stem goes into the olive. So I'm putting this little bit of a slightly darker green right there. I need to soften out that edge just a little bit, so I just have a clean, damp brush, just softening that out. So what I think I'll do next is take my Rosemary & Co. eradicator brush, and this is the size small. I've got lots of water on there, and I want to come in here and just gently, gently move that brush around in a circle. And I'm starting out in the center and then working my way out, and just a very, very, very gentle touch. Then I'm going to take a paper towel, Just dab that up. So that kind of lightened up that highlight area just a little bit for us. But to keep it from having this edge right here where it looks like it goes straight from a highlight into the green, I'm just going to take this eradicator brush and just smooth some water over there. Same thing on this side. I'm just smoothing things out, just barely touching the surface of the paper. Now this needs to dry and then we'll lift out a little bit of color. But before we do that, I'm going to go back with my size 6 brush, have it damp, run that right down through here. A couple of times, then pick that up with my paper towel. Same thing here. I want to run this brush down through there with just water on it and kind of accentuate those highlights just a little bit. Now also, if I'd like to, I can take a little bit of this drier mixture of paint and just come right in here like this, lay that in on this side of the leaf, rinse out my brush, leave it damp. Now I'm going to turn it so that I can come in here at a better angle for my wrist and my brush, and with a damp brush, just soften that out and blend it out into this area of the leaf. I can also do that on this outer edge. Now that this is all dry, I can add some of that drier paint out here, rinse it out of the brush, just leave the brush damp, and then soften that edge out. So that just kind of accentuated the darker areas in this leaf. Let's see if that's dry. I think it's dry enough. We will give it a try and see. Now this time I'm going to get my brush wet, but I'm going to take a little bit of the dampness out, and right here I'm going to, let me zoom in a little bit so you can better see what I'm doing. Okay, this will be easier for you to see. So I'm taking this brush and gently moving my brush back and forth in a sawing kind of a motion, coming around right here and just lifting a little bit of light out. Pick that up with the paper towel. A little bit more. You still want water in your brush, just not as much as when we were down there working on that area. Okay, so I've got that little highlight in there. I think I'll bring it down this way a little bit. I think I'll lighten it just a little bit more. And let's zoom out and see how this looks. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think I'm going to lift just a little bit more up in this direction, just to change that shape slightly. Okay, so now we have a highlight up here and the shadowing behind, which really creates that look that olive sinks in right there. So I'm going to come back over here and grab my smaller brush, which is my size 4, and I am going to take a little dab of the neutral tint, and I'm going to run it right along the back side of this little stem. Take that out of my brush, come to the other side of it, and just soften that out a little bit. Pick up a little bit drier paint, darken this up just a little bit. That's going to help this stem appear more round in shape. I'll take some of the dark green, and I'm going to drop that in right up in here. Okay, and then a little bit more over here on this side to make it look like that part of the leaf is not really catching light. Then down here at the bottom, I'm going to grab some of that green, just darken this up down here a little bit, and right here on this other side as well. Clean out my brush and then just soften that away. Feel free to go visit my website, take a look around. I would love to have you join my Facebook group because it is a place where I give tips and techniques and give you lots of information over there. Some other artists there that you can bounce ideas off of, that we can talk about things, all things watercolor. So I would love to have you join that group, and I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. So have a great day, and I hope to see you soon.